Hey guys, it's Linda Winter with another Winter Designs project. Actually, several projects. This is based on my box bag. My box bag template looks like a house, but it actually works this way on most of the projects. So you can see this is straight edge. What we're going to be looking at today, and Sylvester has joined us, we're going to be looking at this one. This is curved. This is my 4-petal, but it's basically the same. If you think about this, we've got curves here, we've got a straight edge here, but we've got a point. We're going to be sewing, because this is the 4-petal, we're going to sew 4 of these together to create a box or a bag, whatever you want to call it. This is an example of that. You can see from the bottom, if we look, I've got a point, a point, a point, a point coming together. Those 4 points coming together with the thread right there, that's where this template comes together here at the points. So this is the 4-petal, and this is the regular size template. I also have a 6-petal, and the 6-petal is similar. So we can see, I'm going to flip it over here so you can see this is a little bit thinner, and we're going to sew 6 of these together. When we sew 6 of these together, let's grab this one. When I flip this over, you can see those points coming together at the base, and now we've got 6 of these. So basically 3 and 3. I like when I stitch this one to sew half and then stitch it to the other half. By the way, these are reversible too. This one is made by Darla, and you can see on the inside here, it's a darker color. This is like a corduroy fabric, which I love the idea of using other than cotton fabrics for this. So it doesn't have to be a quilting cotton fabric. All right, so then we have, instead of the regular sized, we have a smaller size. This is 75% of this. I'm going to flip these over so you can see them a little bit better. This is a little bit smaller than this. So this one makes this guy here. And then this one that I have makes this one here. And if you look, you can see these are my regular size here of the 6-petal. This is a smaller size here of the 6-petal. This is one that I'm going to finish up for you so you can see. This is the outside that I've got, and there are my petal pieces. We're going to stitch those together. There's the bottom. And when it's not pressed, it doesn't look wonderful, but that's the smaller size of the 6-petal. Then we go back to the 4-petal, and over here I've got the 4-petal, that again, another reversible project. So this one, I love having any kind of a tie-dye or batik or whatever on there, but again, you can see it's more of a heavy-duty fabric inside here, so reversible. You decide what size you want it to be. This is the regular size, and we'll talk about the goodies that are stuffed in here in a minute. This is the regular size, and then this little guy here, this is the one done at 75%. And if you look at the one at the 75%, you can see it's got a handle on it, and the handle makes it a whole lot of fun too. And there are those 4 pieces coming together. This gives you more of a squared bottom, similar to the box bag. So we're going to take a look at this, and I want to pull over the box bag, and let's look at the difference of the two. This is my regular size, my small size of the 4-petal, and this is the small size of the box bag. This box bag and this guy here, the 4-petal, similar but different. When we look at it from the sides especially, you can see this one has more of a curve to it. This one has more of a curve to it, and this one is straight. Just a little twist on things, so you decide if you want it to look more like a basket or more like a box. All right, I want to remind you all about the video that I did with the box bag. The box bag template that comes in a regular size, that's what this is, a small size and a large size. It makes this, and this is the large. Remember this guy here I did in a video a while back, and this is a whole lot of fun to do. I use my Box It, Square It, Place It templates to get the box corners, so you can make them bigger. So this can be wider, which would make this all shorter, but it will hold more at the bottom, or you can make them smaller, so this would be a little bit taller, and it would be narrower at the bottom. It depends on what you're going to be keeping in there. So the box bag template is more versatile, because this here, again, you can see how this Imagine my larger one. This guy here makes this. So you make this size the large, it makes a regular size, and you can do the small size. I showed you how to do that maybe a year ago or so, and then just recently I did a video that showed the drawstrings. These drawstring bags, there's a drawstring here at the top, and what this allows you to do is pull. Now you can see I've got all of these stuffed here. This is the smaller size. And you can see how cute that is. Go watch this video. I'm going to flip it over so you can see the bottom. There is your box bag. That's done with the drawstring style, that method. And then this is the regular size. And what's cool about this is that it kind of fattens out a little bit. That's the regular size. And then I did the big one. This big one, I said this would be a great weekender kind of a case, or to keep in your car with, you know, a towel or whatever for the beach, or if you've got a dog and you want to have, you know, all their goodies in here too, you could do that too. But here's the bottom of it. So go watch this video if you haven't seen this. So this project here is done with the regular box bag, the small box bag, and the large box bag. So go watch that. Today we're going to be looking at the Petal. The Petal template is similar but different. So again, this one has straight edges, this one has curves, this one has curves, and somewhere along the table I've got the smaller, this is the 6 petal, so that goes with this one, and somewhere I've got the smaller 4 petal that we'll find here. So you can see these are the sizes and these are the projects we're going to be working on. Not to confuse you, but I want to throw in one more. This is my long box bag. And when we look at this, you can see this is the old material, the no-slip material that's tan, and it's really dirty. So packing tape will get all that dirt off. What's nice about this new gray material, it doesn't hold the dirt. I do have a template cleaning kit. You can go look to see what's in there, and you can buy it or you can make your own if you have the templates that are done with the brown, this tan material, to clean them off. They're easy to clean, no big deal, but you can see this one just from use is kind of a little bit dirty. But notice the template. This one here is similar to this with the straight edges, but it's narrower and it's longer. Let's take a look at what this one makes. If y'all have seen Sylvester, that's on my sewing machine right now, Sylvester, I have her when she's hopped in, and there's Sylvester. Oh, she's looking at the camera for you too. I have a picture when I first made this. What did she do? She hopped right in like it was a cat box that was made just for her, or a sleeping bag made just for her. This is made from this, and I will do another video on this to show you how this is done, but you can see this has the 6 points all coming together too. So they all line up on the bottom with the points. That's what's so cool about this. So you have lots of options for you. Okay, so hopefully I haven't confused you too much. I'm going to get these out of the way. We're going to look at a few more projects, and then we're going to start working on this. Okay, so I mentioned the 4 petal. This is the 4 petal regular size. This is another 4 petal regular size. I added a handle. I do recommend, if you really want that handle to be a good working handle, you know, this one's fairly long, but you want to think, what is it that you're trying to do? If you're going to wear it over your shoulder, if it's going to go around your wrist, you know, you decide what it is you want to do with your handles. You might even want to do a handle that goes from here to here and from here to here. If you're going to add a handle, you can add a strap on here. It's totally up to you. You can add handles like this too. Remember these back in the day when we all were making purses? If you're of a certain age, you know what I mean. These handles, you can use those kinds of things too. Okay, so handle. This is a 4 petal and a 4 petal. This is the 6 petal. This is the 6 petal, 4 petal. I want you to know that this is more straight up and down, even though it has a little bit of a curve, and this is definitely curved. When you think of your holidays, like Darla made the pumpkins for me, these, the curves, which comes from the 6 petal, this is a lot more appropriate for pumpkins and those kinds of things. This one is really great if you wanted to add from here some ears, maybe make a Yoda bag, maybe you want to have a little elf, you know, those kinds of things. You can add Easter bunny ears here, but you could add Easter bunny ears too from this. So you decide what it is you want, but the curve that you're seeing here comes from the 6 petal And the more, there's a little bit of a bowing here, but not as much. That comes from the 4-petal. You decide which one works best for you. The regular size is easier to make, but the smaller size is really not that hard to make either. We're going to talk interfacings a little bit later on, because you definitely want to choose your interfacings based on what the project is going to be used for, and I'll give you some recommendations and suggestions. If you're doing the regular size, then no big deal as far as using a foam. If you're doing the smaller one, it's a little harder to work with the foam, so I'll talk about recommendations there. All right, so the pumpkins, let's get these just for a closer look. You can see applique on. Darla made these and they are just adorable. You can do an embroidery machine on here if you use an embroidery machine design if you want to. She's done felt and just stitched on top with like a slight zigzag, it looks like. But you're going to do that before you add the lining inside. You can see there's no stitching from the applique on the inside. So you're going to add that before you piece these together. So if you are going to add bunny faces or pumpkin faces or anything like that, do that before. I'm not going to do a video on these just because, well, it's not Halloween right now either, but I want you to get the basics. If this is something you want to see later on, we'll do a video for that. So let's get this out of the way. I'm going to get this larger one out of the way. I love having baskets that have whatever I'm working with at the time, and all the little ribbons and trinkets and those kinds of things. Having this basket, and again, having the handle if you want it, but having these sitting out on your table with the foam, it makes it stiff enough that these really are practical. So you can do those kinds of things too. We'll get that out of the way. This is one that I mentioned that was reversible. This is another one that Darla made. Let's flip this right sides out. Well, let's show you the bottom. You already saw that, how they all come together, but let's flip this over. And this is like a corduroy. I don't know if she used clothing, but I love doing recycled clothing for these kinds of projects. You can buy fabric, but go through your closet. I always recommend grabbing from your stash that you have. Use what you have. Shop your stash. If you've heard that expression before, it's not just your fabrics, but it's your clothing too. If you're going to donate to Goodwill, donate to yourself first. Look at the things that you can use. It saves, a trip, so you're not spending the money on gas, you're not spending the gas, you're, all of that. So you can see I could spend time puffing that out. And oh, by the way, when you press, I've talked about this many times, but use one of the oven mitts. So when we get to the pressing stage, I have this inside and I literally can press on the outside to get all of those things poked out and punched out without worrying about it. Okay, so reversible. You decide which way you like it. Same thing with this one. I mentioned Darla. Darla made all of these adorable little creatures for me. Aren't they so cute? So these guys here, the Easter egg rather than Easter bunny. But these guys here, she used, again, you can see clothing, metallics, all of those fun fabrics for these. And they really, look at this. How cool is that? That could be from a pillow even. I want to flip this over so you can see this. And again, you can see how it totally changes the look when you're using a fabric that is just completely night and day. You've got night and day, or the opposite, but see how different this looks when you've got this here. This was done with my tumbler template here. This can be done with the smaller tumbler template, and these templates, at some point we may do those. It just depends on, we'll look to make sure that we're not knocking anybody else off. All of these guys though, let's get these out of the way because I want to start this project. All right, so Sylvester is on my sewing machine. For now, that'll work. But in a few minutes, I'm going to have her move. So let's talk about what fabrics to use and what fabrics not to use. I've got batting over here. I do not recommend batting unless you're going to make it one of your layers. But even so, I don't really recommend using batting. I want something that gives you a little bit more firmness, a little bit of stiffness. So if you're going to use a decor bond, which is really stiff and really heavy, or something that's really, really heavy, then, put this on the outside so that it gives you a little bit of softness, especially with something that wrinkles. So batting, I'm not crazy about using. I like using SF101, and SF101, you can see right here, it's a lightweight woven fusible. You'll see that I'm going to be using this on my lining, and then I like using the fusible fleece this is my fusible fleece. I like using this for the outer fabric. So we're going to be making from the 4 petal today. This, I love fabrics that are, you know, for little girls, but big girls too. But you can see I've already got the fusible fleece fused onto 3 of these. And I'm going to iron one on for you to show you how I like to do it. You have several different ways that you can cut. So we'll talk about cutting as well. The other thing that I mentioned was using something a little bit heavier, a little bit thicker, and that's the fusible foam. When you're working with fusible foam, when you're working with fusible fleece, you want to find the side that is the fusible side up when you go to put your fabric on top of there. Let's grab this fabric, and when you go to press, you're going to be pressing here rather than here. Because if you're pressing down, that's a whole lot of material for your iron to go through. Read the manufacturer's directions because some of them recommend that you use water and some don't. So it's up to you as to which material that you use, but read those directions. I'm going to pull over my iron and we'll take a look at how I recommend that you iron this. Now, I do not ever recommend that you iron on your cutting mat. So what I'm doing is only temporary. I do have a sheet of the no slip underneath my wool mat. I'm going to place this down first, and you'll notice what I've done. I've already cut this out. When I cut these, you'll see me cut in a minute. I like to cut 4 layers of my fabrics. Unless I'm using SF101, then you can put the SF101 on there and cut all of them out at the same time. I'll show you that in a minute. So we're going to be cutting out 4 layers of this and then 4 of these. Typically, I'll cut 2 of the fusible fleece at the same time. All right, I don't know if you can see, but there's a little bit of fusible fleece that's here. There's a little bit of fusible fleece that's here. So instead of ironing right on top of there, this is where, again, I always recommend using the pressing sheets. The Teflon pressing sheets make all the difference in the world for you to not be screaming and yelling at yourself later on about what you've done to your iron, what you've done to your fabric, what you've done to your pressing mat. Being able to use this and not worry about any of this makes all the difference in the world. So this guy here, when I've got this here, and I think we're on there pretty good. I don't want to overdo because overdoing, especially with SF101, it's going to create wrinkles. When you press, do you see how here I've got a little bit more up and a little bit less down? That's in my seam allowance, but that's not going to be in my seam allowance. So I'm going to take the template back and I'm going to go cut that off. So when you're pressing, use that pressing sheet as I recommend, but I'm going to, again, show you a couple other options too when you're cutting. All right. So I've got my white fabric. It's a little bit hard to see, but I'm going to be placing this right at the edge so I can look to see that I'm cutting off just that excess of the fusible. I don't want that fusible fleece here to be part of my seam allowance and mess me up. So all I do is cut that off. And you notice, again, this is grabbing. I don't need to do anything to the bottom because that was my fabric that I had more of and the fusible fleece that I had less of. But remember what's so great about this template? No slipping, no kidding. This material, when I go to grab, you know, if I'm cutting with something like this, I've got to get on my tippy toes, put my finger down on the table and really hope that this doesn't move and then figure out how to get that shape that I want here. So this, I can see my fabric, but I see it slipping on me. That's why we have the no slip material. All right, so I wanted to show you when you're cutting what I like to do, SF101. Go ahead and iron on the whole area. Do a little guesstimate of how much you need. You know me, I'm always pushing the boundaries. And iron on, and I've got a dirty table. My kitties were all over here today, so there's all kinds of stuff on here. Cat hair we got rid of earlier, but there's still some mess. So iron that on first on one sheet, and I sell this in a big sheet, so you can press quite a bit with that. I folded in half. You decide what it is that you want to do, but this is a really great, all of these are a really great scrap-friendly project. My folds are up here. I've got barely enough fabric up here, so I want to get as close as I can to where I can still cut and still have enough of my point there. And again, when I move in the template, that fabric is staying with me. And as I go to cut, you can see how that allows me to cut. All right, we're going to turn the template, and I'm going to cut off. What that allows me to do is just turn the template as I go. And if you're cutting, when you go to cut, I've got really 8 layers of fabric. We've got 4 layers of the fabric and 4 layers of the fusible SF101. So if you're not comfortable with the rotary cutter, then do 2 of the layers instead of all of these at once. But I want you to see that you can, if you're good with the rotary cutter, you can cut all of these. What you want to do is make sure you've got all of that excess. It is part of your seam allowance, so it's not like it's going to be, you know, a major thing, but we definitely want to use the template for what it's designed to use. All right, so we've cut out 4 of our petals. Front is here and our lining is here. So what are we going to do? We're going to stitch like we did with the box bag, kind of, roof to roof, side to side. But there's not that much of a roof. So what we're going to do, I'm going to grab this and grab this, and I'm going to stitch these together here. Now I want to pull this one over, and I want to show you when you're doing a project like this that has a direction, which we have here. You notice when I use the template, I'm going this way rather than this way for direction. But I also, when I have something like this where there is, I wanted You Had Me at Wolf in the center, You Had Me at Wolf in the center, and then over here you can see I don't have the You Had Me at Wolf in the center. When you're doing something like this, there isn't a fussy cut frame with this, so you simply fold your fabric in half before you cut it and just do a little snip with your scissors at the center. This at the center, this at the bottom, the point when you go to line that up on your fabric. If you've got this, I don't know if you can see that mark that's there. I've got a metallic Sharpie. Well, I don't have a metallic Sharpie there. Let's find the metallic Sharpie. I'm going to go highlight this so you can see that. So if I had a fabric like I had here, this would be a good one for me to have demoed for you. This right here, I folded my fabric so that that was right at the center. I did a little bit of a snip there, and then I lined this up to that, and I lined that up to the bottom. So that's one way that you can use this and still get the placement that you want. Okay, you can pin or clip, or you can just go for it. Totally up to you. What we're going to do, let's see, I have one extra. I think I wanted to fuse. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I was going to show you fusing, but we've already kind of done that with the SF101. Okay, so I've got edge to edge, lined up here, lined up here. You can pin or clip, or again, just throw caution to the wind, totally up to you. You can start at the bottom, you can start at the point, the point which is the bottom, or you can start at the top. It's up to you. You're going to use whatever seam allowance you're comfortable with. So if it's a 1/4 of an inch, then be consistent with a 1/4 of an inch on your outer fabrics. When we get to our lining fabric, we're going to make our seam allowance a little bit wider because we want that to sit in there nice and tight. So you can stitch this way, or you can stitch this way. It's totally up to you. We're going to sew 2 to 2, so 1, 2, and then we're going to sew 1 to 1, and then 2 to 2. All right, I've got to move Sylvester so we can get to our sewing machine. I've been sewing with her on here, but I'm finding that my sewing machine is having problems because Sylvester is on top of the thread. All right, so at the sewing machine, I'm going to start right at the edge, and we do want to back stitch, and she's going to try to get right back up again. All right, I'm locking in my stitch, and as I stitch, I'm going to use the edge of my presser foot as my guide. Sylvester, here we go, little girl. All right, if y'all love my cats, thank you. If you're not a cat lover, I'm sorry. All right, I'm at the curve, and I'm just going right along that edge. We don't need to trim or clip on this project because this has that nice kind of a square but curved edge a little bit. And Sylvester is just determined to come get on top of my sewing machine. Off the camera, we've got Cole over here, and we had her on the cutting mat before, and she did not want to leave, but we got her out of here. So if y'all have cats, then you know what it's like to sew with cats. I will not complain about my kitties being in the way because I don't know what I would do without them. All right, so I've got 3 pins here basically, and we're going to again stitch these 2 together. And you can back stitch, or you can just hold that in place to lock those stitches in. right, I mentioned you don't need to clip. So if this is going to be something that's a masterpiece, you can go in and clip right in here and take out a little notch. I'm going to use pinking shears and snip all of that away. So let's go ahead and do the pinking shears now. Why? Because when we go to do the points, it's going to make it a little bit easier. So we're going to just pink all of this excess. You could press these seams open. I find with the fusible fleece that pressing them open is a bit fiddly. And that just makes it difficult, harder for them to actually stay open. It just doesn't want to lay flat. So let's just avoid it completely and get rid of this. Just a little bit of bulk. Now this would be a really cute one to add, a unicorn. I don't know what it's called, the unicorn horn, if there is a special name for the horn. But when we finish this, we could add a unicorn horn on there if you wanted to. That'd be kind of cool. All right, so we've got two sewn together. We've got two sewn together. We're going to pin at the top. We're going to pin at the bottom. We're going to pin at the top. The bottom, you decide how badly you want those points to match up. They're in the center there, so I'm just going to kind of look to see, and I don't have anything left or right, really, to go in one direction versus the other, because I've snipped all that bulk off. If I didn't snip all of that off, then you may want to lay one down one way and lay the other, you know, the back side down in the opposite direction. It just creates a little bit more bulk than I like, so I like trimming that ahead of time. You know, it just, it shortens the process. All right, so I'm going to start stitching here all the way around, and then our outside will be ready for us to move on to the lining. And when you get to where you're coming to the center, you notice what I'm doing. I'm just kind of moving this around so it's flat instead of sticking up. That way I can just make sure that I have everything right in place and I don't create any little puckers there. And you can check underneath to make sure you've still got everything lined up. All right, we're going to pink these as well. And if you are going to add a handle, then you decide what kind of handle you want. Do you want one strap? Do you want two straps? And determine your placement, and now would be a good time to attach that handle. You can stitch it on the right sides. I'll show you in just a minute what I mean. And, you know, it just depends on what your idea is with this. If you didn't add the fusible fleece and you just had SF101 on one fabric and nothing on the other, you could actually turn this into a little drawstring bag like the ones that I showed you from the box bag. So it would just have a little bit more of a curve. It would poof out a little bit. So you could do that if you wanted to. All right, so let me show you what I mean about adding a strap. All right, we're going to open this up. Remember, this is the 4 petal. So when we look to see this, I've got just the 4 sides. And if I'm going to add a handle from here to here, basically I would fold this in half, line up those seams, and then take a little snip here. I'm going to do it even though I'm not adding a handle, just to show you. All right, can you see that little bit of a snip? That tells me my center, and I would do the same thing over here. So we've got this here. I would fold that in half and take a snip there. If I was going to add a handle from here to here, then I've got my seam, and I just attach my handle coming in from here to here. So I like to stitch my handle down. Let's pretend that this is a long handle, and we want to go from here to here. Do you see how this doesn't line up because there's a little bit higher, a little bit lower? I'm going to put this over, and then you can see from the other side. I can sew from the other side following along that edge. And then this handle would be stitched down here, and then I would bring this over and do it the same thing over here. Or like the handle that I did, I put this here, depending on the length of your handle, mine wasn't long enough to go all the way underneath and over without bunching this up. So I did stitch it, and then I just had this all bunched up, and the handle was stitched right over here. Do that now. That way, when you're ready for adding everything together, bringing it all together, the handle's already done, if you're going to do a handle. I'm not a big fan of handles for projects like this, except for these little guys. If this is a trick-or-treat basket or bag or whatever, a handle would be amazing on this. So you can add a handle. I would add a handle from here to here. On the little one, I mean, imagine putting this on your table when you have company coming over filled with candy. You know, if you put a handle on here, somebody's going to walk away with it. I mean, how cute is that, though? This would make the most adorable little purse if you wanted to do that. Again, a handle, just a little strap for a girl to be able to carry with her. So I like handles here. I'm not a big fan of handles on baskets that are just sitting around, but it's up to you. All right, so this lets me know, yes, I'm going to add a handle. No, I'm not going to add a handle. So now is the time to do it. All right, so we're basically going to do the same thing, but we have a few differences. We're going to stitch along here, but instead of having the foot right along the edge, I'm going to increase the stitch width, my seam allowance, a little bit. I'll show you at the sewing machine. And then when we get to the second piece to add them together, right about here, let's get this out of the way, right about here I'm going to leave an opening for turning. I don't want to leave an opening at the bottom because this may show. On the side it's not going to show quite a bit, quite as much. All right, so at the sewing machine I'm going to lock my stitches in, but I want you to see where I am for my seam allowance. This is the lining, so I want it to sit nice and tight inside of my basket. So as I stitch, you can see where my foot edge is, and I've got a little bit more fabric. So just a little bit more in my seam allowance, where before when I was stitching it was right along the edge of the foot. I'm going to finish up here when we get to the second piece, and we're going to be putting these together. Then when I go to do the turning area, then I'll come back on camera. So I'll see you in a minute. All right, so this area right here where I've got my pin going in this direction, that's the opening area. That lets me know that's where I'm going to be stopping to sew, not this section, to leave that as my turning. And you notice too, I went ahead and pinked those edges. So right about here, I'm going to go ahead and just lock that in place. I'm going to cut my threads, and we're going to go about 1 inch from the top, maybe. And I'm just locking those stitches down. And we'll pink these as well, and then we'll start putting these back together. I'll see you in a minute. All right, so this is my opening area here. That's where we're going to be turning. I pinked all up to, except for here, and over here, except for here. Oh, and you can see I pinked a little bit, but not the bottom. So we'll pink a little bit of that. That way we don't have that bulk at the top. Now, one of the things you can do if you want to is stitch these two layers together. Again, with an SF101, I don't press really hard because sometimes you get a wrinkle that's in those fabrics, and I don't really want a wrinkle there. All right, so what are we going to do? I've got my lining outside. So this is my lining. I've turned this piece right sides out. We're going to place this inside, and we're going to pin at those seams where they come together. And we don't have any bulk here because we've trimmed all of that. If you did decide to press those seams open, or you did decide to leave those seams there, then this is where you'd want to make sure that everything lined up nicely. I just like to get rid of the bulk. And again, if we had added that strap, then I'd be dealing with the strap right now. So having a strap or two straps there is a really nice option if you want to make it a little basket or a bag or a purse or whatever it is that, you know, this can be turned into so easily. You can always add a strap afterwards by just going in and ripping out the stitches at the top, and then adding the strap in place where you want it, and then top stitching all around the top. So it's not like the strap has to be added now. All right, I'm going to go pin. I've done my seams. Now I'm going to pin in the center. If you have a sewing machine where you can take your table off, that's the easiest way to do it. But if you don't, you can actually sew from the inside if you want to for this. So it's up to you. I like to take the arm or the table off. I've got the table on right now. You can take the arm off of your sewing machine if you want to. It's, again, totally up to you. Well, not just up to you, it's what you can do. So let's take the table off the sewing machine. All right, so our seam allowance that we used on the outer fabric, which was about the edge of the foot, that's basically what we're going to do here. You can start wherever it is you like. If you've got straps, you would have already tacked them onto your fabric, so that wouldn't be an issue. When you have straps, sewing over them a couple times is a nice thing to be able to do too. And having the arm off of your machine certainly makes it a whole lot easier to be able to do this process. But again, it doesn't have to be done that way. If you're a quilter, you know the benefits of having your sewing machine sitting down in a table. I like to be able to have just the arm of my sewing machine for a lot of the projects. And whatever bag you're going to be making, whether it's the 6-petal or the 4-petal, the process that we're doing is basically the same. All right, so what would we do? We'd go ahead and we'd pink all of this, trim out all of that bulk. If you're doing foam, you definitely want to trim out the bulk that's there. I'm not going to do that because I want to whip through the process so you can see what goes next. So here's our opening. I'm going to reach in, I'm going to grab. I don't have foam here, so it's really easy for me to turn. If you have the foam, just take your time. The opening that I left here was really generous. That's big enough for you to turn the project with foam too, so that's not an issue. All right, so what am I doing? I'm going to start pulling at these seams because we've got lots of curves. Pressing is going to be a really important step to make this look nice. So you want to take your time and press well, and that's where that oven mitt that I mentioned. You know, I use the shorty mitt. That's the template that I have. It just fits my hand nicely, and it's smaller, and it helps. So I pulled out here. Now I'm going to pull away from, and all we're doing is just kind of giving this fabric a little bit of, hey, this is where you belong. This is where I want you to be. So I pulled that apart. Now we're going to start pulling at these. Even though I'm poking them out here, we're going to be turning this and sticking it inside in a minute, but I still want those seams to be all the way open so that I can get the real shape of this project. This is the kind of stuff where you don't really want to shortcut that process. All right, I'm going to leave this opening to make sure that my lining is going to sit in nicely. If I need to make any adjustments, it's easy enough to do that now. So we're going to go in and just stick this inside. And it's going to look ugly before it looks good. So I'm just holding this and kind of finagling at the seams. Top stitching will be a really nice thing to do to finish this off as well. But right now, all I'm doing is just kind of manipulating that fabric before I even start to tuck this in. This probably takes just as much time as sewing, if not more. So having your ironing center close by, having it set up for you so that you can do this all at the same time. If you're going to make a bunch of these, assembly line is the way to go. Cut, 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 cut. You know, fuse that fusible or whatever it is on your fabrics before, or you know, cut with or without. Totally up to you. So, all right, let's start pushing and poking and all of this inside of here. And again, I want to see if this is going to line up nicely. The 4-petal bag, that's the one we're doing right now, gives you a little bit more shape that looks more like a box, and it shows a little bit more of your fabric. When we look at the 6-petal that I have, that's where it's fun to play with some of the scraps that you have and make your project look really scrappy. All right, so you can see as I manipulate this a little bit, it's all going to line up pretty nicely. If you want to, I'm at the bottom pushing those corners in. If you want to, from the bottom side, go in either with a hand needle or even your sewing machine and just stitch all of these layers together. It's up to you as to how you want to do this. The other thing you can do, if you're really not happy with how it looks inside, is you can find the opening. Let's find that opening. And you can take a can of a fusible, of some kind of a basting spray, or even a fusible kind of a spray glue, and inside just kind of spray around. And when you push that fabric down, it'll lock them in together. I haven't done anything here to keep, on any of these projects, to keep the lining and the outside fabrics together. A couple of them we've top stitched, but even on the woof, you had me at woof, I didn't top stitch. The top stitching will make all the difference in the world. All right, so what are we doing? We're going to, at this point, pull this here. And when we pull this, because this isn't a straight edge, we've got to turn this fabric in a little bit more than you normally would. Normally you can pull, and it's going to give you those nice seams closed up a little bit. So you can see here I've kind of had to create that. I'm going to go to the sewing machine, and we're going to stitch that down close to the edge. And if you need to pin it, go ahead and pin. All right, now I would definitely take the time to get to the iron and really press this well. So let me show you. I'm not going to do it all, but I'll give you an idea. Put that oven mitt on, put your hand inside. And I love the little portable irons here. All right, we've got this here. I'm going to do it away from my cutting mat so that I don't worry about cutting mats, and irons do not get along at all. Can you see how I've got my hand out flat? And what that's going to let me do is get some of that shape. But really where you want to start is right here. And that's where working at your iron on your wool mat, placing this down and getting that iron right inside of here is going to make all the difference. Okay, so let's imagine that I've taken the time to press this and made this look really pretty. I think this is going to be really cute once I top stitch, once I press, once I get all of this done really nice and fill this with a bunch of goodies. So how cute is that? Imagine this with straps too. That would be adorable. All right, so this is the 4-petal, the regular size. Remember, you've got a 4-petal, and I don't know where it is, but imagine a smaller one like this, but a little bit wider. Let's get this back here. I'll move this out of the way. So this is the 6-petal, so imagine a 4-petal that's 75% of this. And that's what we're looking at here, but this is 6-petal. So a little bit fatter, but a little bit smaller. So this guy here, the 4-petal. Over here, this guy here is the 6-petal regular size. You can see it's basically, I mean, almost the same length. Let's turn it this way so you can see it. Can you see how this one is just a hair smaller? Right there? Right there, that area right there, just a little bit smaller. Here comes Sylvester. She wants to check it out too. So this one is almost the same length, but let's compare this one to this. All right, so again, the 6-petal, small, 75% of this size. And that's what I'm working on here. So, same process. You can see I've sewn 6 of these together, and I've done 3 together and 3 together. So we're going to do that with this right here. But this is where I think you can have a lot of fun doing scrappy. So these are all your scraps. You can do it for holidays like I have here for the 4th of July, but this would just be great for a backyard barbecue or for whatever. And you can put your napkins and whatever in there. Inside, you can do a solid fabric if you want to be able to see what it is you've got inside. I just had some of these in scraps, so I figured I would work on those together. All right, so we're going to stitch this together. We're going to stitch this one over here together. We're going to do 3 of those, and we're going to do 3 of those. I want to show you over here, though. I did blue in my center, so when I stitched this, I had my blue here, and I stitched it like this, and a red, and a blue. So I'm basically calling that a red and that a red, a blue, and that a red, so that I have every other. So when you're stitching these together, make sure if you are doing scrappy that whatever goes in the middle, when you go to add that next piece together, that you've got them sewn appropriately. You don't want to rip out the stitches if you don't have to. All right, so we're going to speed the process up, and I'm going to do the same thing doing my lining. And remember, my lining seam allowance is going to be a little bit wider than my outer seam allowance. And I went ahead and pinked, because I like to pink before I join all of my bottoms together. Instead of doing the 2 pieces like I did here, we're joining 3 pieces, and I'll pink after I join those 3 pieces. I'm going to add a couple pins. We'll go to the sewing machine. We'll stitch these up. We're going to speed this process up because you don't need to see me at the sewing machine, slowing down, talking, and all of that stuff. But I'll do the 3 together for you, and then we'll put these together. We're going to move Sylvester from the sewing machine again so I can sew. All right. All right, so I've sewn my 3 segments together. I've got another of my 3 segments together. We're going to stitch one side of these together just as we've done all the others, and you noticed I pinked as I've sewn. That way when I get to the bottom, I'm able to get my points where I want them to be and not have all that bulk down at the bottom. But when I get to the next side, I want to make sure to leave that turning open area. This is the lining that we're doing here. So I want to make sure when I get over here that I'm going to leave that opening here. All right, we're going to look at the bottom. I've got 6 points. They may or may not line up beautifully, and I'm okay with that. This is the lining. It's going to have stuff inside of here. It's probably not going to be showing, and if it is, well, too bad. So this is one of those projects that you can spend the time making it look absolutely gorgeous. And the way you would do that is take your time. And again, right about here where this has a little bit of a curve, you could take a little bit of a notch out on all of these. See that curve? Instead of cutting with the pinking shears like I did there, before I sewed them, you could have taken a notch out. Let me pull over a template so you can see what I mean. You could, when you're doing this, put it on your mat and say, okay, right here is where my curve is, and I'm going to do a little mark there and a mark there, and on your fabric, you could transfer that and take a notch out, and that'll make that bow out a little bit more. I don't care about the bowing out part. I don't think that's that big of a deal, so that's not that important. I like the basket that has the little bit of a curve. All right, so you can see I've put my pin going this way. That's the area that I'm going to leave this open. I've got SF101. I've got SF101. I don't have fusible fleece on this smaller one. So you can decide if you want this to be a little bit stiffer, I would have put the fusible fleece here, although I do like fusible fleece on the lining too. That makes that inside hold a little bit more too. If this is going to be something where you're going to have lots of little treats inside of here, then putting the fusible fleece on the lining will make the inside look prettier and nicer. All right, we're going to stitch along here. I'm going to stitch from the middle over to this other side, stop right about here, lock in the stitches, leave this opening here, and then stitch that up again. So we're going to stitch all the way for the 6 pieces that we have here. We've sewn 3 to 3. Or we're sewing 3 to 3. And I'm going to take my time when I get to the bottom just to have everything nice and flat. When I get to the middle area, I'm just going to lift up and pivot just a little bit, remove that pin, and press everything again just kind of nice and flat. All right, we're coming up to our turning area. So right about there, I'm just holding that in place. I'm going to remove the pin. And I've left a nice, generous area for it to turn. Lock that in just by holding that down. All right, we're going to pink this area too, except for the turning area. And then we're going to put these two baskets together as well. And you can see the difference between the 6-piece and the 4-piece. This is the small, but the large, the regular, is the same process. Again, I probably would be using either the fusible fleece or even the fusible foam. Foam for sure on something that I really want to sit out and hold, some heavier tools and those kinds of things. And notice what I did. I pinked around here, but I didn't pink this area here. All right, so I always want to have my lining outside, and I'm going to have my outside fabric turned right sides out. Doesn't matter how this goes in, so we're just going to stick this in and start lining up those seams. And I don't care so much what's happening down below. I'm just wanting my seams and my top edges to be lined up. You can notice on this one, I stitched my layers down here. I didn't do that on here. It's up to you. Again, if you've got something that's fusible that you've pressed and it just hasn't held up as well, then definitely, do that. If you're doing a sew-on fusible rather than iron-on fusible, then yeah, definitely you're going to be tacking that down. You could do quilting on these if you wanted to do some free motion quilting beforehand. Add your batting, do some quilting if you like batting, or if that's all you have at home, then do your batting and do some quilting on it. That'll give it a little bit more stability too. Now I had 2 seams that didn't line up, so I went ahead and scooted over to where I started, and I'm going to go in this back direction and see if I can get everything to line up. And I had Sylvester on my sewing machine quite a few times while I was sewing, so that may be that there was an area where I sewed and I had to move her in the middle. So I'm going to check to make sure everything is good and see if I can get some of these pins out and get things to line up. If it doesn't line up, then I can go right back here and increase my seam allowance. Do you see how much bigger that is? We'll look to see. It looks like right here the seam allowance is a little bit bigger. So I'm going to do that. Have you done that before where your linings don't match up? Maybe your purse doesn't match up, the outside with the inside. So right here you can see this lines up just fine. It's just that one right here. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to increase my seam allowance right there just a little bit. And I don't know if you can see on the back of my machine, there's definitely some thread eaten up. So that probably there was one time where we had to start over because Sylvester messed up my machine. So maybe that was it. It could be me. It's nice to be able to blame the cat for these kinds of things. But do you see what I've done there? That's going to line up and that takes care of it for me. I would probably trim off that bulk, but I'm going to go ahead and leave it just because of time. All right, so what do? We're going to take the arm off the sewing machine if you're able to take off the arm. If not, you can stitch the sewing machine this way here, or you can stitch inside this way. And Sylvester has come to join us again. I used to let Sylvester stay up here, but now I'm finding that she's messing up my sewing machine, and my machine needs to go in for repairs because her cat hair is getting all over everything. All right, so I'm going to start in the middle of one of these little sides, and we'll lock in, and we'll stitch around. this shape that we're getting with the 6 petal is a little bit different than the 4 petals. So you'll be able to see the difference in just a minute. And I've got a thread that was catching underneath that has pulled. Yeah, and right at the beginning, I can see where it was fighting. I've got my threads, my stitches are all together. Okay, so what do? Same thing. We're going to pull out. We're going to reach inside. And, oh, by the way, again, trim off that bulk if you want to do that, just to help. And, you know, if you top stitch, you can make sure that it's all laying down in the same direction, and that'll give a little bit more substance to the top as well. So you just decide what it is that you want to do with that. All right, and again, pressing is going to be the key to making this look so much better. All right, pulling here, pulling at all of these. All right, let's do a quick peek and just see what this looks like. And then I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to go press, and then I'll come back and show you both of these projects pressed. Then we have a couple fabric options that I want to show you, and then we'll wrap up with this. All right, so you get the idea of this. Let's go ahead and get to this ironing board in just a minute, so I'll press this out. But you can see how cute that's going to be. And it looks like the lining is going to fit in there nicely. Can you see how this, once I give it a good press, that's going to sit in nice and good. All right, so I'll be back in just a minute with these guys pressed. All right, so I've gone ahead and pressed, and on this one I top stitched around. I'm going to show you how to do that in a minute. Imagine how cute this would be with a handle or with a unicorn horn sticking up here or in the front even. You know, a little handle, a handle from here to here, or one handle. There are lots of different ways that you can adjust these to make them work for your needs. This is the 4 petal, the regular size. This is a 6 petal. This is a smaller size. So I mentioned top stitching, so I'm not going to top stitch all the way, but I want you to see how we would do this. Again, if you can take your arm off so you can get to your sewing machine, we're basically going to be placing this right down on top of here and stitch around, just turning this as you go. If you can't do that, you can stitch from the inside. I don't particularly like having my bobbin thread on the outside. So if you can't take the table off of your machine, or you can't take it out of a table, then you can flatten it this way, and we're basically just going to be stitching along. I like using an edge foot for something like this. That's going to help guide you a little bit, but basically you're just going to be stitching, and as you get to this bulk, you can see I've got the fabric underneath here. I'm just basically going to be turning this up as I go and continue to stitch, just turning this as I go because it's smaller. You can also, if you want to, turn this right sides in. This probably would be easier to do. You just want to make sure there's a little bump there. You want to make sure that that's laying flat. We're changing the dimensions because that's the outside, and the outside is a little bit more fabric than on the lining because we changed our seam allowance. But you can stitch from the inside like this as you're stitching. If you want to top stitch, you don't have to top stitch. Totally up to you. I'm going to show you a couple projects that Darla did where she used a zigzag on there, which I think is really a cool thing. And it may be not a zigzag, but a decorative stitch. Okay, so let's wrap up with looking at what we've got here. The 4 petal basket, this one, and this one. These are all the same. The fabric and the interfacing will make all the difference. SF101 on the inside and then fusible fleece on the outside. This has a foam inside, and that really gives it stiffness. This also is SF101 and the fusible fleece on the outside. So these are both a little wimpy, so foam is going to make all the difference. You all know how I love the heavier weight fusible foam, fusible fleece or the fusible foam. So these guys are made with this. They're the 4 petals because we've got the 4 pieces coming together on the bottom. And that's similar to my box bag, but it has a little bit of a curve to it. So that's from here. This one is made from the smaller 4 petal. And you can see again the 4 pieces there, and add a handle if you want. When we look at the handle, she's taken velvet and then she added just some of the seam tape and did a zigzag on top. It may be a decorative stitch from her machine. So this one is top stitched along here just with a straight stitch, just like this one is. These 2 are top stitched there. And then let's take a look at this one. This is a 6 petal, but when we look at the top stitching that's here, do you see the decorative stitch here? Similar to what's done on this little guy, not only on the strap, but on the top stitching there as well. That top stitching with the decorative stitch really, I think, makes it look really nice. You can see it better here. So this here is the 6 petal that's done with this template that we have here. This is the same as this. This guy here, you add, whether it's Easter, the bunny face, or whether it's the elf or whatever, Halloween, it's a perfect time to turn this into a basket, into a carrying bag. But this and this, they're exactly the same template. Again, there's a foam in here and a foam in here too. Similar to this one. And this, again, you can see this is done from the 6 petal. I love the every other, so you can really see them coming together. And this is a great time, again, to use up all the leftover scraps that you have. It doesn't take a whole lot of fabric. So those are done from this one. This guy and this guy, these are 2 done from the small, and again you can see the pumpkin. This with the foam really puffs out, and again I highly recommend you try the foam if you haven't done it yet, because the foam just really adds to it. This was SF101, SF101. You could do SF101 and a fusible fleece inside. That would give it a little bit more support, or you could do fusible fleece, and then 1 layer of FS101 as well. These 2 were made with this. And again, you can see the 6 pieces coming together. So that's the small petal. I want to show you a couple other options fabric-wise, and then a few other things. You can see this is my floppy ear. The floppy ear for the bunny. If you had done a bunny face on here and you wanted to add the floppy ears, okay, you can add the floppy ear on the front. Imagine how cute that would be with a floppy ear, and you decide, do I want it shorter? Do I want it longer? Do I want to put wire in here and have it standing up in the back? If you had wire in here, had it shaped, you can have that standing up. You could have it bent or flipped over or whatever, but have 2 of those. But the floppy ear, I think for the bunny, you can do a face, you can do the cotton bunny tail if you want to. You can just do the ears. I mean, if you just did the ears, you know, and no face at all, but 2 ears, how adorable would that be? And that's done with the floppy ear template. This came out right about the time that I introduced my Time Me basket, because I did the bunny basket. So I think that would be really cute to do as well. And I love using a solid fabric like this. You can use any kind of fabric that you have at hand, but if you don't have fabric at hand, you can go to one of the hardware stores and buy tarps. The painter's tarps are really great fabric. It's got more stiffness to it, so you may not have to use all of the interfacings. You could use fusible foam with this, and that would still give it the support. But something like this would really be nice. You could do a lining like this. Love these kinds of fabrics. This could be the lining, or vice versa, so that you can have them reversible. We talked about the bunny, so if you wanted to make one literally out of bunny fabric, or more bunny fabric. I mean, how cute would this be to have a bag or a basket done reversible with these 2? The one that I did up front here with the pink is more subdued, but imagine how cute it would be with this inside. I mean, look at that. That's just adorable. So it's where you're starting to play around with what it is that you have. So this is a twist on my box bag template. It's just a nice alternative. It's going to make you cute baskets, cute things to have not only sitting around your house for your storage, for your keys, for your tools, for your bobbins, those kinds of things, but it makes a really nice gift too. If you've got somebody that just got a dog, you know, or somebody that loves their dog more than anything, buy them a couple of the stuffed toys, whatever the season is. They sell these guys at the, you know, the little dollar stores, and you can stuff this with some dog treats and those kinds of things. They're going to love having something like this. So it's a lot of fun. You can find these on my website. You're going to search for the word Petal, P-E-T-A-L, winterdesigns.com. And if you have a problem getting to my winterdesigns.com, just go Google Shopify Winter Designs, and it's going to pop up with my Shopify address. But you can go to my winterdesigns.com website, and in the search box, look for the word Petal, P-E-T-A-L. You're going to see the 6 petal, you're going to see the 4 petal, you're going to see the small petal for 6 and the small petal for the 4. But look for the word Petal and you'll see these there. And don't forget, I've got the regular box bag template if you don't have that one, and then the long box. The long box is this one that Sylvester just loves. And I think this one is a whole lot of fun too. It's straight up and down, but it has your 6 points similar to this, but this has a curve. See how they're similar but different? So straight up and down versus the curve. So, you know, you can never get enough baskets, boxes, bags, those kinds of things. I love making these. I hope you do too, and I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, pick up the phone and call me. That's always the best way to get hold of me. You'll see my phone number down below. But if you're not looking down below for all the information down below, discount codes, those kinds of things, links to other videos, you can call me at 850-449-0259. I love talking to you guys, so if you have any questions, pick up the phone. Thanks so much for watching and have a great time sewing.